So, this is Marion Douglas, and as many of you know, I am an entrepreneur. I'm also a life coach. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the things that keeps coming up as a question with a lot of people, and that is your inner voice. Okay, now everybody knows that they have a little voice that goes off in their heads from time to time, and uh, most of us don't want to admit it because there's this kind of societal thing that if you hear voices, you're crazy. But so let me put your mind at rest. Everybody has the little voice, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about that little voice and what it says, and how it is that that little voice sabotages us from time to time relative to creating the wealth and the kind of life that we say that we want to create. So we're going to talk about this relative to creating wealth, but understand that the little voice that goes off in your head sabotages a lot of things. It sabotages your relationships. It interferes with the way that you raise your children if you're a parent. We're going to talk about it relative to creating wealth. And when I say wealth, we're talking about creating an income of $1 million or more on an annual basis. So, but even though we're going to talk about it relative to that, understand that its relevance is in a lot of different areas in your life. So let's talk a little bit about where the little voice, first of all, comes from. I'm going to show you this little thing I drew up here, and if you guys can see that, let me put that so you can see it. Okay, and so this represents what we how we are conditioned. Can you guys see that? Okay, so right there at the top, we are mostly living in a country of some kind, and I think that most of you are in some country. I'm broadcasting from the United States, so I'm going to use the United States as an example. And then inside of the country, there is a state. Can you guys see that? And then this inside of the state, there is counties. And then inside of your county, there are cities. Then in your cities, there are neighborhoods. And of course, in your neighborhood, eventually there's your family. And then dropped into all of that, one day there was you. There you are. Okay? Now, understand also that prior to you being dropped into the middle of all of that, there was a very well established set of rules and guidelines and beliefs and stuff like that was already created before you got here. And the instant that you're dropped into the mix, what we call the societal mix, you start getting conditioned uh, about those rules. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. And from all of that information, no matter what country that you're in, there's a set of this going on. And so you get dropped into that. And from a very early age, you start being conditioned into believing certain things. Okay, now I'm not going to get into whether those things that you are conditioned to believe are right or wrong or good or bad or anything like that. The issue is that we all have them. And this has been my experience, and I get this question from a lot of people all the time, is that conditioning is not only very well developed, but also is very much contrary to creating the kind of wealth that you want to create in your life. That's the reason why, from a statistical point of view, if you look just in the United States statistics from a financial point of view, that most of the people end up broke. And part of the reason for that is because they're conditioned to be broke. They're conditioned against making money, against having the ideas and a way of being about themselves, a perspective of themselves that would be consistent with creating an income of $1 million or more. Now, if you stop and think about that for a second, you can hear the voices in your head. one of the things that my dad used to say, and my dad was a very good man. This is not a question of whether or not he was a good man or not, but some of the things that he taught me were contrary to creating wealth and financial independence in my life. And if some of you have read Robert Kiyosaki's book Rich Dad Poor Dad, you'll get a perspective of what it is that I'm talking about. My dad was an educator, but he was a wage earner, and so his understanding of making it in the world from a career and professional and financial point of view was going to work for other people. Now, not only did he teach that, but he lived that. So my experience of life came from watching my dad and what he taught and what he believed and the way he interacted with that. And much of what it is that I heard and believed became part of the way that I did my own life. Okay. Now, it wasn't that it was bad. My dad did it because it was the way that he was taught, which came from this cultural, societal thing they went on. And then he taught us to do the same thing. And I, in turn, in my early years, taught my children to do exactly the same thing. So if it hadn't been for the fact that I had some intervention from some very good people who changed my whole direction, stood for me hard enough to change my whole direction, then I would end up broke also. So it's not whether or not you can do it, but that you have a set of beliefs that's very much contrary to the kinds of beliefs that would empower you to create the kind of income and lifestyle that you say that you want. Okay? So that actually is where the little voice is coming from in many cases. Now, I can still hear my dad saying things like, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he said that to me so many times that when I grew up and became an adult, the whole idea of being powerful, the way that I related to that was that I would be corrupt. People asked me to get into things like politics, and my answer was immediately, oh, heck no. And the reason why I said that is because in the back of my mind, my dad's voice was ringing. It sounded like my voice now because I so bought into the belief system that it became part of me. Okay? And so I bought into the whole idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And because of that, when anybody asked me to be powerful in any way, that voice would come up. And from that belief system, it created much anxiety and things like that, you know, and I backed away from anything that sounded like it was going to be powerful. The same thing happens with a lot of people because they're conditioned with a belief that money is the root of all evil, as an example. Okay. Now, I don't know whether money is the root of all evil or not. You know, my experience is that I've known people with a lot of money who were greedy and self-serving and all those kinds of things that we try to avoid being. But I've also known people who have a lot of money who are very uh, giving, loving, generous. I've known both. I've known poor people who broke people who were just jerks, in my opinion. And I've known people who were the same thing, very generous and loving and caring. And I knew that financially they were just broke. So the issue is that there are a lot of beliefs that we get conditioned with that are contrary to creating wealth. And when the opportunities present themselves, like many of you as business people have opportunities, that little voice that goes off in your head is going off and often says things to you that are contrary to what it is that would empower you to make the best of those opportunities relative to the lifestyle that you want to create for yourself. So this is what one of the big issues is with many people. So what the heck do you do about it? All right. The first thing is understand that you have been conditioned. It's not necessarily you. And when I think back on my own life, I there are many things that I did